Day on Wall Street this week is sparking fears of a recession. How will it impact Connecticut and impact you? We'll ask financial planner Eric Hogarth. Plus, he's trying to get his old job back, former Hartford Mayor Eddie Perez, and why he thinks he should replace Mayor Luke Bronin. Also, Connecticut is in the hunt for tourism dollars. Why should people vacation here in the Constitution State? Randy Fivish, the state's tourism director, is here with us. It's all straight ahead this Sunday morning, August 18th, 2019.
From Eyewitness News, Connecticut's most watched local political program, this is Face the State.
It is 8:30. I'm Dennis House. Thanks so much for joining us for Face the State. Tax-free week in Connecticut kicks off today. That's a week when lawmakers want you to go out and spend some money. But after the worst week on Wall Street of 2019 this past week, what are consumers thinking? What is their attitude about spending money and saving money? With us today, Eric Hogarth. He is a certified financial planner with Johnson Brunetti, frequent guest on some of our other programs here at WFSB. And we thank you for being here, Eric.
Thanks, Dennis, for having me.
So after this Wednesday, which was just horrible, worst of the year, what are people thinking as they go out this week? Because they're looking to spend some money, maybe save some money on taxes. What's your advice?
Well, it's interesting because that was one of the big articles that came out Thursday morning that, so the market in the morning Thursday, well, now it's going up. Yep. And a big factor there was consumer spending, which accounts for 2/3 of the economic activity going on within our country, is up, right? And we're a largely retail-focused nation. We spend money, and that holds things up. And Walmart announced earnings before the open of the market on Thursday, and earnings were way up, right? And their shares up 4.5% just on Thursday alone. So that's a positive thing.
If you were, well, you'd be a billionaire if you could predict what's going to happen this fall. But what's the outlook in terms of numbers we're going to be looking for as we enter September?
I mean, what most people are talking about is the market's gone up for so long, right? So it's not about this inverted yield curve, which set off this frenzy on Wednesday. It's more about the fact that how much longer will it keep going up and up and up? And as much as you hope best case scenario in your planning, you have to plan to prepare worst case scenario. So it gets into your proximity to retirement. But if you're concerned about the height of the market and you've got good gains, maybe it's time to be thinking about keeping some of that, right, and shifting away from some of that risk.
The presidential campaign will start to heat up this fall a little bit more, and we have some municipal races as well. Is there any correlation with the markets at all in terms of do they usually do well during a campaign, or is it different every time?
It's different every time, but there's a lot of focus right now on, of course, what's going on with China, right? Because that is impacting very heavily what's going on within our market and the worldwide economy, and that's impacted by politically what's going on in our country. So that is something that gets watched extremely closely right now, is this back and forth that the U.S. is having with China and what that means for these big domestic companies.
To the viewers at home, they're saying, how does China impact me? How does it impact the average everyday consumer?
Enormous amounts of things are built in China and sold to the United States. And this back and forth commerce is extremely important. But when we start thinking about everything that we use every single day, how much of that stuff is built in other countries, largely China, right? That's impacting the growth, the numbers, the profitability of so many domestic companies, whether it's the Apple or Google, which everyone kind of knows that, all the way down to more basic retail or Johnson & Johnson, and how many of those companies are impacted by stuff happening overseas, and effectively it's all of them.
What's your advice for people who are concerned about perhaps a dip in their 401k recently?
When do you need the money? Right, that's what you need to be thinking about. Is there is no, I've got to be doing this or I've got to be doing this. It's very specific to you, right? If you're 30 and you're saving for retirement, keep saving. Don't ever stop. If you're about to retire, right, a lot of folks that we see are taking more risks than they should be taking, right? And you need to know a very basic thing if you're approaching retirement. Do you have enough money, right? And that merits a conversation. But if you have enough money, if you've done a good job saving and you made it to the safe space, then stop taking more risks than you need to be taking.
You know, the recent job figures we see across the country seem to be on the way up, but in Connecticut, they're on the way down. How does that, balance out when you're an investor or, at home and you're looking at your numbers?
It's hard. You can't talk about retirement with retirees without talking about our state, which I love, right? I grew up in Durham. I went to UConn. I'm raising my family here. My wife and I are. But the reality is that we have a lot of people moving out of our wonderful state, and a lot of that is critical of tax, cost of living here, and that it's difficult. That's a big part of the conversation, is the taxation that's going on, and are you going to be able to stay here? Because a lot of those folks, most of them, they want to stay here. but is that going to work for them?
Yeah, it's interesting because, we were talking to another financial planner a long, long time ago who said that he advises some of his people who no longer have kids in schools in Connecticut and they're retired to perhaps make their residence in another state. It's a tough piece of advice to give, but financially it does make sense for people, which is why many are going.
So it depends how much. So we look at a shift. If it was 20 years ago, a lot of people, the goal was, it'd really be great if we could have 2 homes and spend time between the 2. And now with the emergence of whether it's Airbnb, which maybe older folks aren't using as much, but just long-term rentals, now it's more and more often people say, I really only want to own one house. But is that house going to be here? And people ask sometimes, Eric Joel, why would we stay in Connecticut? From a cost of living and tax standpoint, you wouldn't. But that's not why my parents are here. My parents are here because they love Durham, they love their community, the Durham Fair, but their grandkids are here, their family, their network. And it really comes down to, if you're going to own multiple homes, how much time are you going to spend in those? But certainly, there's a lot of states more tax advantage than ours. It's
a great state. We'll be talking about a little bit the wonders of our state coming up a little bit later in this broadcast. Eric Hogarth from Johnson Burnett, we thank you so much for being on the program today. When we come back, we'll be talking about the race for mayor of Hartford with one of the candidates who wants to get back in the game. We also welcome you to watch past editions of Face the State right now on our YouTube channel or on our app.